artist, when I travel, I get all this energy from traveling. I mean, all my antennae are out, and I'm about as thrilled and alert and open as I can possibly be, and I put that energy into my artwork. So I finally got into Burma, and I thought, man, the great-looking faces, great-looking people, and my focus is humanity, people, sculptures, and I thought, I'm going to do a sculpture. I'll call it The Face of Burma. I don't know who it'll be. Maybe I'll see a particularly strong face, or it'll be an amalgam of something, but sooner or later, wherever I went, people, when they realized they weren't being observed or overheard, would open up and talk about how hideous the government was, and then Aung San Suu Kyi, Aung San Suu Kyi, man, they just brightened up.
Her name kept popping up.
Yes. She's the one we trust. One older lady, she said, I said, what do you think of Aung San Suu Kyi? She is the only bright star in our dark night.
Wow.
Wow, what a great image.
Yeah.
Well, by the time I was finished with that trip, I knew who my Face of Burma was going to be. And so I began tracking down reference material and whatever I could find, which was not much. The Western world didn't know anything about Burma, didn't know much about her, and so it was a real chore finding reference material to do it. But here's the thing I had done. I had collected some soil samples from all over Burma, Shwedagon, Irrawaddy River, Bagan.
Why?
I don't know. I had come back in from Bagan one day, and I realized my sneaker was full of sand from around the temples that I'd been walking. And so, for some reason, I poured that into a plastic bag. Maybe I didn't want to mess up the room. I didn't want to dump it on the floor, and I just set it aside. And then I came back in, wherever I went, the Irrawaddy, Mandalay Hill, you always end up with some sand or dirt in your sneakers. And I just started putting it in that bag. I didn't really have anything in mind. It was just, I was following an impulse. Well, when I was doing this sculpture, I thought, ta-da! I'm going to take all this soil and mix it into the clay I'm using to make the sculpture of Suu Kyi. Cool. So that sculpture is permeated with Burmese soil. And even as I was leaving, I went up to University Avenue, where she was under house arrest. And you couldn't get near the house. It was all cordoned off, barbed wire, armed soldiers, and I was kind of playing stupid tourist. I wanted to see how close I could get to the house, and one of the guards started yelling at me, and I pretended to be oblivious to that, and at one point he stepped out into the street, chambered around, and slapped his rifle, and I thought, this is as good a time as anybody to turn around. But I dropped my shoulder bag and picked up a handful of University Avenue and stuck it in my pocket. So I even have soil in there from near her house. And it's an amazing, some sculptures.
And how did you get the image of her in your mind? Because the sculpture, and anybody can do a search. You could just put her name in sculpture, and in Google Images, and your image will come up.
Yeah.
Of your sculpture. And everybody comments about how lifelike the sculpture is. That it has a personality, and we've talked about it. You actually feel as the light changes in the room, her personality changes. The personality of the sculpture changes. So how did you come up with the image to be able to do that? Just from photographs, obviously.
Well, limited amount of photographs, but I kept searching and searching. Now, this is before I had a computer. This is back in the 90s. And, I mean...
Jim, do you have a computer now?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And it's invaluable. I use it to research trips. I use it to... if I were doing Suu Kyi today, I would just go Aung San Suu Kyi, bang, click images, and unlimited pictures of her.
I say that because he's non-technical.
Yeah,
he doesn't like technical stuff.
Technological dodo. I'm not really. I know enough to...
You just choose not to have it encumber your life.
That's right. I use it as a useful tool. I know, I learn in direct ratio to what my demands are. And first is research. Anytime I'm doing a sculpture, whatever it is, I go to images and Google that person. Abundance.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's
great resource tool.
It's really useful. I was doing a sculpture of Elvis Presley for somebody. And I got to a point and I thought, man, I need a profile view here. Man, I go in the next room, Elvis, Google, images, scroll down, left profile, print it out, right profile, print it out, go back in the room and keep cooking. That's taken me 15 minutes. In the past, man, I'd have to shut down, go to the library, start looking through books, maybe go to the bookstore. Hopefully I'd find what I was looking for. Go to Office Depot, Xerox, copy, blah, and you're talking about at least a day or maybe 2 or 3. So it's a wonderful, wonderful tool, and I learn what I need to know as I go along. And email, you know as well as I do. Well, I guess email is not too hot anymore, but as a global person, boy, does that cut down my phone bill.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the fact that we can type out a thing and...
When I was teaching English over here, it was funny because I'd tell the students I'd have to explain to them what snail mail was, sort of, because they'd never used it in their lifetime.
Yeah.
They really haven't. You know, they grew up with email, and they understand the word for post office, and they'll mail letters and stuff for school stuff and stuff like that. But, you know, I have to explain to them that, you know, you'd have to go, you know, back home, how long it would take for correspondence back and forth. Yeah. You know, weeks.
Email might have disappeared as we're sitting here talking. It might be history. It's changing that quickly.
You know, a lot of the post offices are closing up because there's such a small amount of mail, and they're talking about privatizing it and just you know, let contractors take care of it because it's not efficient to do anymore. And you know, with UPS taking care of packages and you know these you know, transportation companies, the post office really doesn't have a big role anymore.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
I envision it just disappearing completely. People won't have any need to use snail.
So anyway, back to so you've got the images you got, and how did you come up with the expression of? I mean, because when you look at your sculpture of her, what did you see or in your mind that came out in the clay?
Well, the key piece of reference, as I searched around, somebody put me onto the fact that there was a government in exile in Washington, D.C. Sue and her party won elections by a landslide, and that's when they locked everybody up and put her under house arrest. So I got in touch with them. This was invaluable. They sent me videotapes.
Really?
You can do a killer painting from one photograph because it's a controlled point of view. You can't walk around behind that photograph or that painting and see the back of the head.
That's right.
If you're doing a sculpture, man, you have more than 360 degrees of profile. So you need an unlimited amount of varying views of that. Now, ideally, it would be, if I were doing a sculpture of you, we'd be sitting here talking and I would be sculpting. The key is, most people are going for a likeness. For me, likeness is a given. I don't stop there. That's when my real challenge starts. And with her, I see, number one, that you can't deny when you look at her, beauty. Absolutely beautiful. The other is she's very unique, original-looking person. If I didn't know she was Burmese and I saw a picture of her, I would have a very difficult time placing her in the world, even though I'm a global person. So ideally, if you can't sit there and talk to the person and find out if they're intelligent, funny, awful, arrogant, mean, those are the things I'm going for. And you can see the shape of an ear, but what's the shape of intelligence?
That's right.
That's my challenge. So
intelligence, perseverance, all these non-tangible characters.
Courage in her case.
Yeah.
So I got that from the video. All of a sudden, from these photographs, and another great source was reading her books that she had written. That gives you the inside of her, inside her head and her heart. Invaluable. the words communicated something to me. And those videotapes were terrific. They were things that she had done in her home in Rangoon under arrest to accept awards or make statements, then they mysteriously disappear out in the Western world, you know. So they had a library of those at the Burmese government in exile headquarters. The Prime Minister, who's her cousin, sent me some videotapes. Man, I was in business. Here's this animated living person. So,
how much research went into it? How much time before you actually started working with the clay?
I got into it right away, and it was simultaneous, trying to get more and more. I was just
so it started to develop as the sculpture was building. So was the information, the knowledge, and the.
It evolves. You know, when I start a sculpture, I'll find it when I'm sculpting. I'm not locked in. So many people, they plan things out, make measurements, and then bang, they're going to translate it from dimensions and mathematics and drawings into a painting or a sculpture. That's way too rigid for me. Like you mentioned, mine, when people come to my studio, there's Suu Kyi, there's the Dalai Lama, there's the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, and people say, man, this is really distracting. I feel like I could walk up to, did the Dalai Lama just blink? I mean, they're alive, and that's mission accomplished.
Yeah,
I've had people walk up to the Suu Kyi sculpture and go like that. And so what are you doing? I said, there's got to be a pulse in there. That's not a static object. And I hate most sculptures. They're, you know who it is, but there's just this
caricature
lump in space with no vitality, no inner life. And like you pointed out, I'm so happy in my studio as the light of day passes over that. Sometimes she looks a little amused at some private thought. Other times she looks kind of sad, you know, at the plight of what's going on there. Other times she just looks really determined, and it's all very subtle. And also, there's something in the eyes of my sculptures. That's really, who said eyes are the windows of the soul.
Speaking of the eyes, you actually do the eyes last. You've told me this before. And what's the purpose of that? Why? What's the reason for it?
Well, I didn't realize I was doing that. And a really great artist up on the border in Mesot, he was watching me. I was instructing some refugee artists in the basics of sculpture. And he sat there and looked and looked and looked. And he said, Jim, I noticed you did the eyes last. And that was the first time I was even aware of it. And he said, why? He said, when I'm doing a painting, that's the first thing I do because it's so critical and it is so much the person. And I said, you know what? A three-dimensional object, it's almost like a presence that you're face-to-face with. And it's very unsettling to me to have this person staring at me as I'm manipulating their face. I guess that's why I put them in last. I mean, but I, you know, like any artist, through trial and error, learn from beautiful mistakes. I love mistakes, man. We're human.
Now, did you all hear that? He loves mistakes.
Yes, change and mistakes, and it's like, you know.
And why is that?
Well, you know, you get kids in class, and it's like, man, they don't want to raise their hand. They don't want to go up there. I don't know anything. I'm going to be look foolish. Adults are terrible that way. It's like, I know that. I know that. You know, you can't tell me anything I don't know, and they don't know what you're telling them, but they're not going to admit it because they don't want to appear foolish. And it's like, if I get a hold of people I'm teaching stuff to, I say, man, let's start making mistakes. Get them out of the way because.
And you learn from the mistakes.
Absolutely.
If you don't mistakes, you don't learn.
Yeah, and we're there because we don't know how to do this.
That's right. If you already knew how to do it.
How could you do it? And that doesn't mean you're foolish. Hey, I don't know how to, I don't know, pick something. I don't know how to reassemble a motorcycle. I'm not stupid. I just have never had a need to do that.
Yeah, no skill set.
I know if I had to do it,
you could learn your way through it.
I can get the information I need, and that's called school or books or whatever. And I don't feel like a fool if I ask a question about, where's that hose going there? It's like, that's the glass hose, dummy. You know, but then, I don't know, that's the learning process.
So anyway, back to the sculpture. So you finished the sculpture in what year?
1999.
99. You finished the sculpture. Then it gets interesting.
Well, Yeah.
How did the information get out of your studio? And because it takes on, that sculpture takes on a life of its own. Hold on a second, because this is one of the things that is sort of annoying to me. And one day I'm going to do a video with my sound decibel meter, so people can see how loud these advertisements are as they go down the street. Because I think they're not good for the kids when they're sitting next to. Not good. It's just too loud, you know? And it's sitting at a traffic light with a kid on a motorbike next to that. I think it's not so good. It's sort of.
Well, so it repels you rather than attracts you.
I agree with that. I actually think it's a non-advertising. I do too. To me, I agree. It gives me a bad association to whatever they're selling.
I'll see an annoying commercial on television and think, remember that, because you're never going to buy that.
No, that's right.
That really is annoying.
And people don't realize they're creating annoying, associations to products. But anyway, so you finished the sculpture in '99, and nobody knows about it, sitting in your studio. Then it gets interesting because it takes on a life. How did all that happen? And we'll talk about where the sculpture ends up, or actually the replica. What do you call as you cast off?
Well, there's the original, and then there's casts.
Okay.
You make a mold on the original so that you can reproduce it in a limited amount of casts.
Okay, so it's done. It's sitting there. You say, "Wow, she's cool." Okay, then what happened?
Yeah, I was really delighted with the results. And I mean, a funny thing, when I was working on it, friends would come by and say, "Man, are you still working on that? You usually work a lot faster than that." And that's when I realized I was so intrigued by her, I was slowing down, spending more time with her in a way. And then, but also that was an advantage because it gave me the opportunity to read more of what she had written herself, to get inside her. So that was part of the process. But sculptures like this, they're not commissioned. There's no money involved. People are always coming by saying, "Wow, man, that's the big bucks," which kind of
turns you off.
Well, it startles me. It's like, why would they ever think? How does
this equate to money?
It has nothing to do with anything. Yeah. Odd reaction. Anyway, but it's a compliment from them because they're saying, "Wow,
there's a lot of value in it."
That's the best way they can say, "Wow."
That's right. Yeah.
And so,
to them, they equate value to money.
Yeah. So these sculptures that I can't not do, people I really admire, people who inspire me,
or people that you despise.
Yeah, political
we
caricature.
won't go there yet.
That's another thing I love. Political character. I can go after the bad guys and win.
That's right.
But that's another story.
Yeah. We'll save that for another video.
Yeah. And so this sculpture absolutely took on a life of its own. And I thought, well, let's see now. This is an important sculpture for me, and I just had an instinct about it. And I thought, I'm going to make a mold, and so that I can make some additional casts. And unbeknownst to a lot of people, usually the original sculpture is destroyed. The original sculpture, unlike a painting, is used to make a mold, and then they go to bronze or whatever, and when the mold's taken apart, it just tears the original sculpture apart. And that's thrown away. And then that, through a series of processes, it goes to a bronze foundry or whatever. I love the material I work in for people. It's Italian terracotta, and if I really like a sculpture, I'll only make that one. But this one, because I thought there would be a demand for copies, I made the mold so that I didn't destroy the original. And I, touched that up and repaired it. Now, I made the first cast, and I thought, there's no way I could have done this without the assistance of her cousin, the exile government, and the video they sent me. They were so nice. So I got back to them and I said, I will bring you a cast of the sculpture, and if you find a use for that, it's yours. I mean, if you want to reproduce it and generate income that will go to the cause, I give you rights to it. If you want to just have it in your embassy in Washington, D.C., but you were the ones who really played a key part in making this possible. He was overwhelmed that I wanted to do it. They actually sent me. He and his staff went home and pulled pictures of Suu Kyi out of their photo albums and sent them to me to use. I was really moved by that. So anyway, we set a date, and I went up to Washington, and I figured I would meet them, give them the sculpture, maybe go to lunch, and then go home. Big event, man. I showed up. The pictures I had spent, they made posters out of them. There were Burmese reps from all over the world. I was the guest speaker. I didn't know that.
Really?
And the real bonus, the back of the room was all catered food.
Whoa, that is a bonus.
Yeah. So anyway, I presented the sculpture there, and then it occurred to me, I said, you know, I cannot imagine what it's like to be exiled from your own country, that to return home means imprisonment, interrogation, or worse. So this sculpture is permeated with Burma soil. I'm going to stop talking. I want everybody to come up here and put their hand on this sculpture. Wow. You'll be returning to Burmese soil.
Wow.
I'll never forget that moment. It was just electric. People just got so quiet and reverent. People teared up, and this line formed, and they just came up. And what do you hear in museums and every place? Don't touch, don't touch, don't touch.
Yeah.
I feel like Rodin, the French sculptor. If a sculpture is really successful, you want to get involved in it. You want to touch it. You want to, you know, and I love it when people go up and look for a pulse and say, she just blinked. And that was just amazing. So that was another part. This sculpture has become kind of legendary. It's my favorite sculpture. It's probably my most famous sculpture. And oddly enough now, it works 24 hours a day for her. Whoever comes to my studio, whether it's media or clients or friends, sooner or later say, who is that? I get to tell them about her in Burma. Easier than jumping people and saying, you got to listen about Burma, it's important.
And now that actually the cast, one of the casts you gave to the family.
The one that I presented at the headquarters in D.C., the Prime Minister, he said, Jim, I'm going to a memorial for Suu Kyi's husband. He died and was not permitted to go visit her, so they didn't see each other again.
And she couldn't go to the funeral or to see him when he was ill.
So
that's how resolute she was.
That's right.
Because she knew she couldn't come back in if she left.
Yeah.
She was so resolute to help the Burmese people that she opted to not go.
Yeah, they said you
sick.
can leave, but they wanted to lock her out, and she promised the Burmese people she would not abandon them. And so I thought, great, but here's the life it takes on its own. I never dreamed, you know, and that was at a point when, especially her two sons and she, there was no evidence that they would ever see each other alive again. And so that sculpture would end up with them. And unlike a picture, here's the three-dimensional presence. I was so happy with that. And I said, listen, when I go back to Florida, I'll make another cast so that you can have one for the embassy here. So there's two casts, one with her family, and these keep showing up. On her birthday celebrations.
They become surrogate. They were surrogates for her because she couldn't leave. So your sculpture would go in her place at the Brighton Film Festival, wasn't it?
It was the annual Brighton Art Festival. She was the honorary chairman, and so the sculpture showed up for a month for the show, and it just kept happening. And anything associated with her that I've done, it just is. There's a vitality. It isn't just there and finished. It's begun, and it's on its way. And now I've just hand-carried the original all the way from Florida.
Okay, before you're going to talk about that, okay, because the idea is you want to present it to her, but you always had the desire to meet her. And when you were here last time we spoke, you were here about 8 months ago. The last time we spoke, you had just returned from a trip because you got an invitation. So tell everybody about that, because that I think that is one of the crowning moments of your life knowing you the way I do,
Yeah.
that little things are great and they're wonderful and we appreciate them all. But there's moments in your life that you just look and go, wow.
Yeah.
And so tell them. I mean, because we were conversing back and forth about you wanted to go back to Burma. You might have been persona non grata. You might not have gotten a visa to go. I wasn't sure because you did these caricatures of undesirable people in Burma that might have had some retaliatory feelings towards you. We debated whether you should even go. Then all of a sudden, what? You got an invitation.
Yeah, I was here in Chiang Mai, and I went into the internet place one morning, and here's an email, very brief one, from NLD headquarters, her political party, and it said, Suu Kyi would be happy to meet you at her home in Rangoon at 10:30 a.m. on December 28th. It was like, you know.
And what date was it? When you
I
got
had
the email?
8 days.
Yeah,
8 days.
That's
Now,
right.
I am persona non grata. I'm on the blacklist, so I'm thinking,
Well,
oh,
you gotta watch
no.
every once in a while, make sure we still have a battery. We're not losing it. Go ahead.
Okay.
So yeah.
No, I said, oh, no. She's inviting me. She says, yes, the regime's going to say no because beginning in 2007, I went into the embassy. I was going into Burma on an annual basis and was really involved in the democracy movement. In 2007, no visa. Why? Problem. What's the problem? No visa. And escorted out into the street. Tom, how are you? I'll see you guys later. That's the wife of Bob Tilley, who runs the Writers Club and Wine Bar up the street.
Oh wow! Which she still uses the tri-shop.
Yeah. She's a doll.
Somehow.
She's just really great, very accomplished, intelligent. What a great front person for business and all, and that's where all the Burmese, the guys, the authors and writers and journalists hang out who cover the Burma situation and Southeast Asia and Thailand at large. But anyway, so my dilemma is, number one, can I even get a visa? I mean, it was just no way. So local contacts here, they said, put it through these people. They deal exclusively with Burma travel, and this was from the Burmese community here. And I went over there, and she said, go to your guest house right now. Come back with your passport. You've got to fill out the applications. We've got to fast-track this down to the embassy in Bangkok immediately to get it back in 2 days, because the embassy's closed on the weekend, and then you've got to book a flight. There's only 2 flights a week into Rangoon from Chiang Mai. So I did it, got it in there, and just tried to distract myself. It's out of my hands, nothing I can do. I went back there. She jumped up and gave me my passport. There was the visa, booked a flight into Rangoon, and in I went, and this just took on kind of a dreamlike quality. It just didn't, I was in another zone while all this was going on. It just never, I mean, the idea that I could meet her and now bring this sculpture into Rangoon to her.
But at that time you went, you did not take a sculpture with you.
Oh,
you
no,
just
no,
went
no,
for
no.
the meeting.
She just invited me to meet her.
At that time, which was last December of 2011, when you went, you had been there before, and you noticed, you told me, you noticed as you were driving in, changes. Billboards and things.
Unbelievable.
And you were going...
Yeah, something was really different. I got off the plane in a brand new airport that wasn't there not just a few years ago. MI, military intelligence, is always there scanning and looking for people and maybe putting a tail on people. I didn't see anybody. I went through customs. Welcome to Myanmar. Enjoy yourself. Nobody searched my luggage, which they always did. They went through your luggage. So I walked out into the arrivals hall and looked around, and I thought, well, I'm going into town. Jumped into a cab. 2 kilometers from the airport is a giant billboard with Aung San Suu Kyi's face on it. A few years ago, if you got caught with a picture of her or a picture of my sculpture, which was in circulation among the Burmese community inside Burma and worldwide, if you got caught with a picture of her, you were in trouble, man. You were going to be arrested, interrogated, and maybe worse. I got into Rangoon, the streets, wherever you looked, there were Aung San Suu Kyi pictures, calendars, posters. There were like 15 new magazines and newspapers, and up until then there was only the New Light of Myanmar, which was the government rag. Suu Kyi was on the cover of everything. I went out, I bought a newspaper, opened it up. Here's an article on Abraham Lincoln, an article on Václav Havel of Czechoslovakia, and then Suu Kyi on every other page. Yikes, this is so incredibly different. And, you know, nobody was convinced that this was irreversible. We were used to the regime making changes, releasing her, releasing political prisoners, and then when they got, and then bang, putting them back under arrest and shutting everything down. They always wanted to see a broken and grateful woman when they released her. Not to happen, man. More.
So you had your appointment. You knew you were going to show up there. You thought it was going to be fairly brief.
Yeah, I would have been happy. I would have been happy to be in a line, with 50 people and get a few seconds to shake her hand and maybe a photo op. And I showed up. I was carrying a bag with gifts, some books and photos and different things. And I got to the gate, knocked on the door, and the door in the gate opened, and her security guys were in there. And I just said, I announced my name, and I said I had a 10:30 appointment with Suu Kyi. And I thought, well, they're going to frisk me and go through the bag and all. And they just said, oh, come in. I was expected. They knew who I was. I said, go to the house. And here I was standing there. There's this famous house I'd seen photographs of.
Her prison.
Yes, it was her prison. And for almost 20 years. New green lawn, sprinkler system, beautiful day, sunny, flowers all over the place. I could even hear birds chirping. It's like, this is not real. I walked up to the house, and this guy met me, and typical Burmese, he said, we're colleagues. I'm the architect that she commissioned to renovate the house. I said, man, it looks beautiful. Are you still working? And he said, no, we got along so well, she's asked me to stay on as her head of security.
Wow.
Typical Burmese. He said, go into the house, and they ushered me into this room. Here's this wall dominated by a famous painting of her father, which is the background for half of the photographs ever taken of Suu Kyi. And they said, make yourself at home, sit down, she'll be with you in a minute. And one thing that occurred to me, everybody who had ever met her said, this woman walked into the room, this tiny, delicate, fragile little creature. And so that was going through my mind. Man, she comes zooming in the room like a young schoolgirl, comes up, grabs both of my hands, and we just started talking almost simultaneously. Intelligent, open, friendly, warm. And I looked at her and I thought, if anybody asked me about her size, I would say she's about the same size of anybody she's in the room with. I mean, this enthusiasm.
That's great.
I'd never in a million years think, tiny, delicate, fragile little thing. And boy, you talked to her, it was a thrill talking to her. You could just see the synaptic junctions flashing. Man, she's just really bright, intelligent. She knows history. She's like, you get the impression she'd be a real difficult negotiator. You know, some people have said, she's kind of teaming up with the regime now and they're using her. No way, man. Look at what she has given up to stand for Burma, And so it was, we ended up talking for like an hour. She served me tea and cake. And my friends got a kick out of it. They said, boy, that was good-looking cake. What was it like? I didn't taste it. And I'm known as a real chow hound. They said, boy, you must have been besotted to pass up groceries right under your nose. But just a stunning, amazing experience. And when I was finished outside, she had sent me over. She said, go over to NLD. I'm trying to do a sculpture of her father. Very difficult to find reference material. And she said, go over to my headquarters, and they have a lot of stuff that isn't commonly available. And she even recommended pictures I should look for. But I stood outside that gate and I thought, man, thank God this kind of integrity hasn't been bred out of the human race.
But
I mean,
it's few and far between.
She brings up the game. And then a real good friend of mine, I got home and he said, man, that's amazing. He said, that's like when Elvis met Nixon. Well, he's a big Elvis freak, so that's an ultimate compliment. And then he said, no, I retract that. He said, I didn't mean to diminish it in any way. I said, yeah, it's just like that, only I wasn't drugged and looking for a, law enforcement badge. He said, you know what? That was like meeting Gandhi. It is.
Yeah.
Look at who she is
it's one
today.
of the few people in the world
Yeah.
that represent the values that we aspire to in human beings.
And boy, I thought, man, then I go home and here's Republican debates where they're trying
And did you talk to her, though, about the sculpture and that you wanted to bring it back to her?
Yeah, I said, you know what? I never dreamed. Never even thought about bringing it here. It just didn't seem possible. But I said, with the changes now, do you think this is an opportune moment to do it? And she said, let's take a look at how the year plays out. And so I took a look at how the year played out, and I hand carried it. It's
so
here.
When you came this time, you had you didn't travel alone.
No. And in a way, you might think, I just wrote a thing I called Returning Native Soil. I'm finally bringing back Burmese soil to Burma because that sculpture's permeated.
It's coming full circle.
Yeah, and it's, I don't know, it's just, it's a nice kind of full circle. All of it was accidental. From the beginning to the end, never anticipated, never desired, demanded. It was never a plan. That thing, once it existed, took on its own life, and finally it's found a terrific resolution. It's going where it belongs. And no, I couldn't be more thrilled. And it's funny, I mean, they took pictures of our meeting. I immediately went to Photoshop and had some prints made. And to this day, I'll pull out a print of she and I together, and I'll think, that must have happened. This is photographic evidence.
Yeah, or it was photoshopped in. I was photoshopped in with a software, but I wasn't really there.
Yeah. But too, it's like some people, people ask me, they said, gee, were you nervous? And how did you prepare for it? I wasn't nervous, and I didn't prepare for it because I didn't know what to expect. I thought, I'm going to see her for a few seconds and maybe even get a picture with her. I'm just going to be overwhelmed by that. And then to be entertained by her, just she and I for like an hour. I don't really have words for it, really. Yeah. And
somebody just told me that they've sent me information that that Burma is now opening up to tourism, but that they're going for the higher end traveling market. That the prices were really expensive for lodging and things like that. Did you find that?
That's what I've heard. You know what happened? As usual, when all these changes took place and people started lifting sanctions and all, the greedy boys, man, brand new market, let's get in there. So the business guys are always the ones that show up first. And so there's very limited hotel space in Rangoon, which is the center. Even though they have a new capital, nobody goes there. So everybody's jacking up the prices for limited space. And then I think a lot of these people that think they can make a killing, they're going to realize, man, trained labor isn't there. The infrastructure is horrible. The roads, the trains, the airfields, unreliable electricity, all kinds of things.
And you're paying top dollar for that experience.
That
doesn't make sense.
But it's like, get in there first, get in there, be the biggest, the first, the best. I think there's going to be a reality check. Although, Sue, when she traveled through Europe, She said, we're very excited that people are coming there and want to create business, but we're hoping they'll create ethical businesses that benefit the people and not just the greedy few.
And she caught hell at the summit, the meeting that was here, where she said, you know, how did she say it about
reckless
don't be
optimism.
over, yeah,
Reckless optimism.
Yeah.
Because that was the first thing I asked her when I met her. I said, how should we view what's going on right now with skeptical optimism? She said, that's exactly it. But then she cranked it up to reckless optimism because she knew she was dealing with business people. That's amazing and that's gutsy. That would be what she was saying in Europe. She addresses 2 houses of parliament. She addresses the Nobel Peace Prize, and she talks about kindness. Wow, that'd be political suicide in the real world. That is so wonderful. That's why I say it's amazing that this has not been bred out of the human race. She's anti-violence.
She always has been.
Yeah. And she, I mean, to be talking the thing she loved about the Nobel Peace Prize, she said, you know, here she is living in absolute isolation in her house. I can't, you know, somebody as highly evolved as her, I can't imagine, that's just unimaginable cruelty to isolate somebody like that, in addition to all the other negatives.
And that was the purpose.
That's
right. To get her to be so uncomfortable that she wanted to leave.
But she has no animosity toward them. She doesn't want revenge. She's not angry. She wants to meet with them, work together, and she talks about kindness. And she's a Buddhist, so she talks about metta, loving kindness. Wow.
Yeah,
I mean, just the
other... not have that kind of animosity. And it's like, you know, Nelson Mandela and Gandhi and, you know, all these people share that value. That human value that's a rare commodity these days. Well, we're going on an hour on the video here, and no problem. It's been really a great opportunity to catch up with you. And this is the first time I ran into you on the street for, what, 1 minute?
No.
Yesterday, saying we're going to do breakfast and catch up. And we got a lot more to talk about, and we might even do some more videos as time goes on, because this was sort of a fun subject, but I wanted to get caught up on all the great things that's happened in your life and your experiences about this sculpture and things like that. But we got a lot more to talk about, and we'll do some more videos. But it was great having breakfast with you. Great to have some people sit in and share our conversation with us. I'm sure we'll get a lot of feedback on that. And, very cool
well, as usual, man, it's great to see you. It's great to be back. And as I always say, get underway and remarkable things can happen.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, there's always an option. No matter how bad things are back home, I always tell people, listen, don't get caught up in it. There's always an option.
Absolutely.
You know? And once you find the option, take the first step to make it happen.
What a place for options, huh?
Yeah, here. That's right. So JC and Jim signing off for now, and we'll catch up with you on another video about another subject.
All right.
Take care.